This is a response to Blackarooni's The Inversatility of Godzilla. I think to be straightforward here, I cut out the first 5 minutes because this sequence summarizes his point here, his first main point. So, I trimmed it down to its most bare essential before moving on. I will play the clip and then I will talk about what makes this part so weird, and then we'll move on to the actual part of the video where he starts talking about Godzilla.
3, the majority of people's favorite characters have had little changes to who they are fundamentally. Hulk, Magneto, Captain America, Wolverine, Doctor Doom, Black Adam, Robin, even relatively lesser known characters like Moon Knight have had very little fundamental changes. Also read the Jeff Lemire run, it's really good. And it doesn't just have to be superheroes. James Bond to an extent, Optimus Prime, and even King Kong also fall into this net. But notice how I'm using the word fundamental as in the foundation of the characters, their essence, what makes them stand out from a crowd, what they represent in the meta, in the macrocosm of pop culture, what they mean to people on an individual level. Some can extract shards of meaning from what is already there in the character and analyze them in their own way, as any great piece of art allows. This is why so many people love these characters for different reasons. But what about Godzilla? What is Godzilla? Who is he? What does he stand for? Of course, we already know what he means. He's the embodiment of nuclear holocaust. But people have been saying that Godzilla can represent anything, that he's versatile. And if Godzilla can mean anything, if you can have him mean so many things, you end up with him lacking a concrete identity of his own. In Batman the Animated Series, Clayface had so many faces, so many masks of different people and personalities, that his own identity was completely drowned and diluted because in his torturous stupor, he forgot where his characters ended and where he himself began. When you can mean so many things, you end up meaning nothing. And if you mean nothing, how can you be concretized in the macrocosm of pop culture? Why should anyone care?
So, Blackarooni's argument here actually doesn't start with the whole what the superheroes mean in a macrocosm or whatever. It's this whole thing he's been repeating. But no, it doesn't start there. It actually starts at this whole thing where he talks about the nuclear holocaust here. He says that Godzilla represents the nuclear holocaust in the original movie. The problem with identifying Godzilla as a figure of the nuclear holocaust is that he forgets that Godzilla is a victim of the bombs. Godzilla is not literally a stand in for the nuclear bombs that blew up Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Godzilla is entirely different from this. Godzilla is a victim, and ultimately, he isn't really the bombs. You can't like just say, oh, Godzilla's nuclear holocaust, then you'd have to reframe everything. Who is America in this analogy? Who is Japan in this analogy? Beyond, that isn't just literally Japan. And which characters are, all the people involved in this? Who's Oppenheimer, et cetera, et cetera? Like you're gonna have to like back this stuff up. This doesn't make sense here. And so the the reason why we're gonna be working a little backwards here is because the rest of the argument doesn't really make sense here. Blackarooni goes, well, because these characters have one individual core trait that everyone loves that's fundamental, then they matter in pop culture. And so Blackarooni he seemingly can't figure out why Godzilla is in pop culture. This is kind of his video where he's going, why is Godzilla in pop culture? I don't get it. The everything and nothing argument here is interesting to me because Blackarooni doesn't seem to understand why Godzilla fans are telling him that Godzilla means all these things. Because he doesn't believe that Godzilla has a singular core trait, or at least he can't identify it, he believes that nobody really should care about Godzilla because why would Godzilla have a core trait? He's been on these things, and that means he means nothing. And Godzilla's only main representation is nuclear holocaust, which is wrong, obviously. So, what could it be? Well, Godzilla is a vehicle for social anxieties. That's what he is. That's what he literally means. Most Godzilla films grapple with history. Godzilla is traditionally usually the gigantic obstacle. That's what Godzilla really is. And that's what Blackarooni can't identify here. So for a majority of the video, he then proceeds to try to identify this through other content.
The very fact that Godzilla is never a fixed thing is a problem. If you want to explore specific aspects of Godzilla, that is all well and good. If you want to push the limits of what and who he is, all the better. The possibilities are endless. But how many Godzilla movies can you point and say the original message is still alive in it? Not many. With the Showa era, Godzilla went from representing a nuclear holocaust to the movie monster we all know to a superhero in the span of 4 movies. In the Heisei era, the only time this is acknowledged is in Godzilla 1984, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. Other than that, he was kind of supposed to be a somewhat tragic animal thanks to the input of this character, but I don't see any sane person sympathizing with this.
Blackarooni here undermines his main point immediately off the bat by straight up just saying, the possibilities are endless and you can explore aspects of Godzilla's character. The title is called The Inversatility of Godzilla, and they talk about how he talks explicitly about how you know, all these superheroes have their core traits and can do a bunch of different stuff. And here he's going, well, Godzilla means nothing, which he's building off of that thing. So he could then say Godzilla doesn't follow his main theme, which means he means nothing, which means he can't be versatile because he is nothing. The problem with this is that Blackarooni explicitly is basing this off of a metric he made up, which is Godzilla is the nuclear holocaust from the 1954 film. I'm not going to tell you why. I'm not going to explain why. I don't know why, but he's the nuclear holocaust. And Blackarooni also ignores one of Godzilla's major emotional points. He acknowledges that Godzilla in the Heisei films is attempted to make sympathetic, but because Godzilla destroys things and kills people in his rampages, then you can't sympathize with him. It's impossible. The thing is that Blackarooni thinks so narrowly about Godzilla. He wants Godzilla to be a destroyer. I feel like that should be very obvious by now. He believes that since Godzilla destroys things and inherently will kill people, then it is impossible for Godzilla to be sympathized with. Hence, the whole screaming thing and stuff like that played off as a joke. But it really is just an unexamined ideological standpoint where he goes, well, Godzilla is the inhuman monster. You can't sympathize with something that is, the living embodiment of what he calls the nuclear holocaust. That's the whole point of that whole statement he was making, claiming that it was the nuclear holocaust. He believes it's impossible for Godzilla to be a person.
In the Millennium series, the only time this was ever a concrete thing was in GMK.
Since we're operating off of Blackarooni's framework of Godzilla in 1954 representing the nuclear holocaust, um, well, that's also still incorrect. But also, since he's still running with this idea, he assumes that GMK is the only one that inherently has Godzilla as the nuclear holocaust. This is untrue and is actually really about, enraged Japanese World War II soldiers, being ignored, mundane life taking a hold, and people forgetting the sacrifices they made, which was really just imperialism over in other places, such as the Philippines and such.
In the Monsterverse, it's not present at all. It's only in the Reiwa era in which this is somewhat present consistently, but even Singular Point doesn't have your nuclear-powered Godzilla. He's a higher dimensional super god here to bring the catastrophe, as the show calls it, essentially the end of the world. Of course, the show isn't bad because of this reason. The main issue is the overly complicated plot being dragged by the lifeless anorexic spaghetti arms of what the show calls characters.
Singular Point isn't bad. I really just want to get this out of the way real quick. But the whole point is that because you can tell Blackarooni's confused about the science, is that it's not really about the science. The science is just a way to bring the myth into life. The science is actually insane. It's basically a bunch of people trying to ascribe science and facts and knowledge onto gods, basically, literal immortal myths, right? This is the stuff we'd probably be doing in real life. This is the power scaling stuff that people do, basically. That's how it goes. I hope this helps, but the point with these cardboard characters as well that he claims is that mostly every single Godzilla media has quote unquote cardboard characters. But the point is that the story around them on them is very much rich and, filled with all this stuff, and the monsters are the externalizations of the people.
And in the Polygon trilogy, Godzilla is just the apex predator. It's just Mother Earth. It's even in the name Godzilla Earth.
Godzilla Earth has nothing to do with apex predators, man. That's not what apex predators are. That's not what it means.
There's not much to him. Of course, this doesn't make the film bad. Matter of fact, the plot is actually somewhat consistent.
All right, I'm sorry for doing like this little pausing between. I don't ever really want to do this again. Like, I don't like speed pausing and then speaking like that. I really like letting stuff play out, then arguing against the big picture. But like, these are all little like microcosms of him misunderstanding things or just being broad sweeping statements. What does the plot is consistent mean? What does that mean? You were saying that Godzilla is, the nuclear holocaust, right? And none of these guys are consistent with that like version of Godzilla or core trait of Godzilla, right? So what does consistent plot mean? What does that have to do with this? I'm so lost here.
Question is, however, does Godzilla having a concrete identity affect the writing in any way? The answer is a complicated yesn't. Because, and this is a nuclear hot take, as iconic as the original 54 film was, the writing does not hold up to modern standards for storytelling, which are higher than they were 70 years ago. Aspects of the plot are rather contrived, and the execution of certain plot points are a bit clunky. For example, Godzilla is supposedly awoken by nuclear tests, which is where his radioactive nature comes into play. The issue is, however, that the people of Odo Island already seem to understand his existence well enough to have an entire oral tradition around him, since he's been around for generations. He can't be a saurian mutated by nuclear radiation and a creature of ancient legend at the same time. It sounds dumb, why can't he be? That's what he was in -1, right? Well, yes and no. All we knew at the beginning of -1 was that the residents of the island knew who Godzilla was and that he brought deep sea fish whenever he rose from the sea. He's just a creature that exists, and then he got mutated by nuclear tests.
There is a lot to unpack here in this. So let's start with the actual film content before we actually go on to the outside opinion here. So Blackarooni points towards this idea that this film is contrived, and he uses a strange example, the Odo Island, and other thing relating to Godzilla here. The thing about Godzilla is that Godzilla is explicitly the name of a fictional minor kami specific to Odo Island, right? And the ceremony is very legit. Legit. Godzilla is a minor Shinto deity in the context of the film, but he's just worshipped as such. Godzilla in reality is just a gigantic animal, really. But the thing is that Godzilla's been asleep this whole time. And they theorize that Godzilla has existed for a long time because, he is has existed for a long time. He's been worshipped for centuries. It's the thing about this film is that Godzilla doesn't attack cities because Godzilla's hungry, but Godzilla attacks cities because, it's Sarazawa's rage. Sarazawa is a man who is, exploited and humiliated by, society. Godzilla also can't exist in this society. Sarazawa builds this oxygen destroyer to, oh, build a weapon that could, end all wars or whatnot. It's a weapon that could be the worst version of the atomic bomb. The reason why Sarazawa destroys it is very much common knowledge to Godzilla fans because he does not want it to get into the wrong hands. But Godzilla is also his other self, like, Carl Jung, which I am not a Jungian or whatever, but basically Godzilla is like his shadow self, right? And so Godzilla is like this wrathful, rageful monster, and he goes around killing people, but it's also like a self suicide for Sarazawa. The whole point of Sarazawa's experiments on the fish in the film are explicitly analogous to Godzilla destroying cities. I did all of that explanation for a reason. It was to show the whole, comparison in 1954, how Godzilla is treated on Odo Island and how they, explore his character there and how it connects to the later stuff. And meanwhile, Blackarooni uses this whole opportunity to bring up -1 and then goes, Godzilla looks different in Odo Island but looks different when he's destroying cities. But when, 1954 does it, they look the same. That means it's contrived.
The reason why it doesn't work in 54 is because the movie doesn't establish that Godzilla went under any mutation. He was just awoken by the bomb. His physical appearance is also confirmed by him showing up the next day on the very same island, meaning the creature that attacked the island was the same as the one we see for the rest of the movie. We can accept the idea of Godzilla that the original poses with no problem. We can accept what he represents. But on top of the fact that the movie can't really decide on what Godzilla is between a creature affected by the bomb or somebody or someone, a legend that embodies the bomb.
Blackarooni uses 1954 and minus one as two separate like distinctions, right? That minus one is better because they physically show Godzilla getting and they also show a physical distinction. Meanwhile, in not minus one, in 1954, they say, "Oh well, Godzilla looks the same here." And they also looks the same here. And it's not even like Blackarooni acknowledges the budgetary reasons, but he says it's contrived because physically they look the same. And then he also tacks onto this by going, well, actually, 1954 can't actually decide what they want Godzilla to be, even though it's from two conflicting character standpoints. There are multiple conflicting character standpoints within the film of what they want to do with Godzilla, what Godzilla represents, or what Godzilla is.
Rarely do the films stick with what is commonly understood by fans and directors. Not to say that there aren't any films that do this, I'm making that abundantly clear. Off the top of my head, 1984 versus Biolante versus Destroyer, GMK, Shin, and now recently Minus One all do this. Although Shin is more of a modern retelling, but the spirit is still there because radiation is still a big factor. In fact, Minus One did it better because we could actually see the bomb physically affecting Godzilla, even for a brief moment. But there are more movies that don't do it than those that do. Granted, this doesn't necessarily affect the writing quality because 1984 and Versus Biolante are very contrived movies regardless, but keeping Godzilla's identity somewhat intact is a positive I suppose you can levy at the films.
My response to all of this is that movies don't want anything. Movies do not want anything. Movies are not separate from their directors, their writers, their crew, their actors. Movies do not want anything. Again, please don't say stupid stuff like this.
But all that is undermined by all the plot contrivances such as Godzilla never finishing the job with humanity or humans never taking the opportunity to kill Godzilla when they have the chance.
I swear to God, man, we're like in parody land now. This is not getting any better. This is getting more like incomprehensible as time goes on. Like this guy is literally lying through his teeth. The military tries to kill Godzilla. They've literally used weapons to try to kill Godzilla in the Heisei trilogy. They've tried to get rid of him with time travel. They tried to kill him with some weirdo devices, bro. You are being intentionally obtuse.
Nukes are not earthquakes. Godzilla is not a typhoon. So the very existing of the Heisei era is in itself both unfaithful and contrived. It's unfaithful because it doesn't treat Godzilla like a nuke, and neither do the characters, especially that one environmentalist that shall not be named. And it's contrived because there is absolutely no reason why anybody should stop trying to kill Godzilla. Looking at you, characters from Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and there is absolutely no reason why Godzilla should stop his rampage for any reason save for when he's hurt, but the times where he isn't at the end of the films outweigh the many times that he is, and in those times he could have finished destroying everything. Nothing stopped him, and there is nothing that should indicate that he is tired. He just leaves for no reason. So in essence, Godzilla's identity and the writing quality of the movie are somewhat intertwined because for the former to work, the latter must be executed well.
Okay, this whole entire thing is silly, bro. I re-recorded this several times to try to be charitable as possible, but like I'm thinking that this is actually just a giant temper tantrum, which it really is. It's really just a complaining, whining mode when he does it, saying that, oh, well, Godzilla's not like how I want it. I want Godzilla to be more like a nuke. I want Godzilla to do nuclear holocaust. Even though previously he basically misunderstood Godzilla's, previous stuff, which early in the video I talked about. This is embarrassing. This is stupid. This guy doesn't get it. He's just like throwing out his preconceived notions onto Godzilla and getting really, really mad when it's not like it. Godzilla has entirely different themes in these movies. And I don't know why you're expecting every single little Godzilla theme to be the same. None of them are. Every single one is a little bit different. Just embarrassing, man. Genuinely embarrassing. I don't know how you can just be a Godzilla reviewer without understanding that Godzilla has a multitude of themes and identities.
That's the main takeaway. So what can writers learn from this? People in Hollywood, what can they take away from it? For starters, you can stop thinking with your wallets and start using your brains. That always helps. Or you could always just try recapturing the spirit of the original in a heartfelt oh wait, we already have that. Okay, so what now? What do we do next? Simple, we expand on the subject. I think people conflate tone with identity when it comes to characterizing Godzilla, because the subject matter behind Godzilla's character is serious, so they don't want him to mean what he is supposed to mean to make room for the fun. But this
I just want to say you were literally geeking out over the Heisei films not having Godzilla do more nuke stuff or being related to nuke iconography as much as the previous movies. So, um, I don't know why you're telling Hollywood that they should learn from this.
What I think people should really consider is what they mean when they say Godzilla is versatile, because I believe so too, just not in the way people picture it. I recognize that what Godzilla already means can be expanded on with different interpretations and brand new iterations of the same concept. But if you think that can't be done because then the movies would get boring, that means you probably can't come up with new and imaginative ways to expand on what Godzilla already means, which shows a lack of imagination on your part and a lack of faith on the writer's ability to be imaginative. Not that it's entirely wrong to not have any faith, look at the movies we've been given. Godzilla x Kong isn't a bad movie because it has a lighter tone and more monster action. It's bad because the plot is held together with a single ply toilet paper, a dust ball, shredded carrot, and a beetle's dung.
It's just astonishing at this point. I really feel like this is just a video sent down to test me because, geez, this is not very pleasant at all for me to watch. I don't like this video. I think that's obvious. But the other thing to understand is that this guy, Blackarooni here, is using his identified version of Godzilla to go, well, Godzilla is versatile, but just not in the way that everyone else thinks. Even though Godzilla represents tons of things in his films, it's just impossible for Blackarooni to acknowledge that Godzilla is not just about the nukes. And that's the problem. He is so close minded, so single minded with this idea of what Godzilla could be, what Godzilla is to him, in his eyes, that he can't understand Godzilla being so much more than just the nuclear bombs. There's a reason why Godzilla is literally about grappling with history, exploring different types of people, exploring different types of things, exploring different types of sciences, worlds, etc., etc. Godzilla is so much more than just some simple nuclear allegory. Godzilla is not even literally the nuke in in his first debut movie. He's a movie monster. Godzilla is literally a, a victim of the nuclear bomb. And Blackarooni can't understand this. So instead, what Blackarooni does is that he says, well, the movie is contrived because, like, I saw two conflicting viewpoints and I thought they were both the omniscient narrator. This is sad, man. This is a guy saying that he's a film critic. This is a guy saying he's an aspiring screenwriter. And like you shouldn't be I shouldn't be doing this. I really shouldn't be so like negative. I shouldn't be attacking him as an individual person, but this video is embarrassing work. If you are going to say that you are an aspiring film critic and this is the best you have to offer to how many people, entire audience, this is sad. This is embarrassing.
But amongst the most glaring issues is the underlying issue that Godzilla doesn't mean anything concrete anymore. When you lack a defined identity, what even are you? When over time you dilute yourself just to have what you know you can't logically have out of some thanatotic desire, what do you
Sorry, I have to be snarky for a moment, but that was a horrible usage of Freudian psychology stuff right there, man. Don't use that again. Oh yeah, and also, you're still trying to go through the motions of trying to figure out what Godzilla is, man. That's like sad. I don't get this anymore, man. I feel like this whole video is designed as an exercise for you to try to figure out what Godzilla is, and you still haven't figured it out yet. Instead, you go in with preconceived notions of what Godzilla represents in one film and then applied it to everything else. And that only film you probably applied it to was minus one and called it a day.
end up becoming? You become nothing. Also, don't watch The New Empire. Watch Dune 2 instead.
So this video finally comes to a close. Well, his video. This one isn't. Not for a little bit. But the thing about Blackarooni here is that when Blackarooni's keeps saying all this stuff about the audience not caring or like Godzilla not meaning anything or Hollywood having to learn from this, it's actually really just a stand in for Blackarooni himself. How, you may ask? You see, Blackarooni is using a nebulous Hollywood audience members will suddenly like learn from his videos or something along those lines, which he's implying that Hollywood should be learning from him. That if they understand him, then they will not remove the seriousness and the fun or whatever. It's this whole thing. It's weird and doesn't make sense. It's very vague. Serious and fun is very vague superlatives that he's using. And Blackarooni is doing this because he's talking to himself pretty much for this entire video. He's basically trying to reaffirm himself that, you know, Godzilla has some merit to him. Godzilla means something to him. And at the end, ultimately comes to the same conclusion as he did in the beginning, that Godzilla means nothing. Other people have told him so many times that Godzilla represents social anxieties and grappling with history and so many more ideas. But he chooses to, not see that. Instead, he sees it like this: Godzilla is a big nuke or the nuclear holocaust. If he's not that, then it's not Godzilla. And that's all. That's how Blackarooni sees it. And that's sad. It's a very sad thing because this is the extent of where his film criticism goes. In his multiple black screen videos, he has this on-glooming threat of the new empire being terrible, and he goes, it's Thanatonic or whatever because Godzilla and Kong are running together. And it's silly. It's silly, man. It's just sad how this video is structured, how it works, what the point of it is. It never has a point in the first place, actually. It's kind of just him attempting to reaffirm his previous arguments, but longer, like in We Can't Have Both, where he starts complaining about the fact that Godzilla should be tonally the same forever. Blackarooni tries to rectify this in this video where he goes like, oh well, we need more movies to be both serious and fun, but Godzilla isn't like that. Whatever that means, it doesn't work. And he's like, oh, I had the most fun at Joker in the theaters. And it's like, okay, yeah, good job, buddy. Good job. Thank you for saying it's subjective. We all knew it was subjective in the first place. Now that's not the point. Okay? The point of this is that of his whole spiel with that whole serious and fun thing is that he was trying to rationalize this idea where Godzilla can actually mean something to him and also be like the new empire or something, and he didn't get that. Instead, he got the new empire without any of the serious stuff that he wanted, and he hates the running, and he hates everything that makes Godzilla goofy, and he wants Godzilla to be the nuke. If Godzilla is not the nuke, then the environmentalism doesn't matter, the cities don't matter, nothing matters. There's to him. Godzilla to him is everything, and nothing matters. And that's interesting, right? It's this guy essentially sitting there and telling me that Godzilla means nothing because he means everything. He's just like Clayface. He's just like Clayface. But the truth of the matter is that Clayface was a dumb idiot guy who couldn't be an actor properly. He ruined his life. He killed himself, and now he is a million things, and he's lost. Meanwhile, Godzilla is a corporation mascot who means so many things, has so many fans across the world. So many kids love him. So many adults love him. So many parents even recognize him as everybody knows Godzilla. Godzilla is iconic for a reason. Godzilla is embedded into pop culture. People just know him as the giant monster, as Godzilla was intended to be in the first place. He has always been the movie monster. Blackarooni has tried to argue against this by saying that Godzilla was originally nuclear holocaust in this video, but he's the movie monster. He was never going to evolve into a movie monster. He already was a movie monster. Godzilla is Godzilla, and that's what it is. He is a walking vehicle for all these social issues, all these social anxieties, all these things you could tell in stories. Godzilla is everything. And Blackarooni just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand it. Normally, at the end of a video, I would probably be saying, all right, have a good day, everyone, like and subscribe or whatever. But this was a sad video to make. I don't like this video. I think this video is probably the best of ability of Blackarooni's film criticism that you could ever muster up, because this is basically his swan song, right? This is his probably last Godzilla video before he said in the description of his video that he's going off to the military, pretty much. And this is the most he can do. This is the most he can do. Embarrassing, man. Please don't make a Godzilla review video again if this is the most effort you're going to put into it, because this was the most fact checkable, easy, baby type work I've seen in my life. Most surface level, just whatever. This was sad. This was sad. Please don't make a Godzilla review video again unless you actually know what you're talking about, because this was embarrassing to listen to, embarrassing to watch, embarrassing all around. Good night, everybody. Like and subscribe if you want to, but you don't